Welcome to another episode of nlsa podcast. In the world of constant challenges and evolving leadership, few stands boldly.
Can I remind you what happened in 2010? We have the right people in the right places. It's that 83%.
Today, we have an exclusive conversation with Cameron Brewer, the Member of Parliament for Upper Harbour.
I'm someone who knows my strengths, but probably more so knows my weaknesses.
What is his vision for better New Zealand? How does he navigate through challenges? And how does he lead with a purpose? We will explore it together.
It's about opening new markets. It's about opening ourselves out to the world, being less insular.
Plus, here is thoughts on effective leadership during the time of crisis and advice for aspiring entrepreneurs.
I see entrepreneurship as...
Get ready for an engaging conversation that uncovers the essence of leadership in today's world. This is nlsa podcast with Cameron Brewer. Welcome to Never Late Show with Anuvindh, aka nlsa podcast. Thank you, Cameron, for your time. I really appreciate in your busy schedule, you still find time to be in this podcast. Before we start anything, I just want to know about your early life.
My personal background is a relatively modest one. I grew up on a sheep and beef farm in South Taranaki. My father was a sheep farmer who rode a horse every day of the week and attended his flock. And I was born in 1973, so it was kind of like kids during the 70s and 80s that were relatively innocent and simple times compared to some of the complexities that young people have to deal with these days.
What was that moment, that inspired you to be in the politics?
Yeah, there were a few family members that were involved in politics.
Wow.
And I had a elderly relation that used to come and stay with us when she was going to national party conferences and that. My parents took a big interest in politics, but they were never, and they were members. They've been long-time members of the National Party, but they weren't actively involved. They were supporters, but not volunteers, if you like. I was lucky enough to go to boarding school, which was for me a pretty positive experience. It got me out of small town Taranaki and got me into the big city of Wanganui.
Okay.
But no, more importantly, that probably sparked my interest because I got to meet some really interesting people at school and kind of started on a trajectory of what do we do next. And so it just probably lifted my sights a bit, got me off the farm. Got the first person I shared a cubicle with was the terminology in a dormitory.
Okay.
I'd come out of Harbour Intermediate and he'd come out of Government House. His father and mother had been Governor Generals in the 80s. And so here I was coming out of a small rural town and he was coming out of Government House as the son of the Governor General. And so then I go and stay with them and that, and it just kind of broadens your horizons. And so I suppose in that early days, the biggest help that I got to fulfill the things I've been doing since is probably my father and mother working like dogs to pay for school fees to get us a good education and get us off the farm. And so that, if you had to put one thing down to my childhood, I think sending me to Wanganui Collegiate and my brothers was overall has been positive for our life since.
Okay. So what was that clicked moment that said, okay, this is going to be my career. The politics is going to be my career. What was that moment for you?
Oh, well, that came a lot later. I was publishing a newspaper in Dunedin called Inside Otago, and I was in my mid-20s.
I saw that photo on Facebook that ton a lot of papers and you're posing in stylish. That was really nice.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you used to see me getting around in my 1981 Mitsubishi Sigma delivering all those papers. Yes. You've done your research. And I was doing that in Dunedin, and I'd studied in Palmerston North and Massey University. And I'd read a book called The Demon Profession by Michael Laws, who had been an ex-National Party Research Unit employee and an ex-MP, and is now a commentator. And anyway, he wrote this very colourful book of when he was in the National Party Research Unit, I think in the early 1980s and early to mid-1980s. And so I thought, geez, this sounds like a lot of fun. And then I was trying to get out of Dunedin. I'd sold my newspaper, my community newspaper, as a going concern to a business investor. And back in those days, in the late 1990s, you'd have to go to the library to look for jobs in the papers that would arrive. And I saw writer National Party Research Unit, which meant working for the national government. And so I got an interview there, and I was lucky enough to be employed inside that 1990s national government as a junior staffer in the research unit in Bowen House, part of Parliament Buildings in Wellington. So I started. I left Dunedin, left my job. Well, I'd consulted back to the person who purchased my newspaper, and then came into Parliament as a staffer in 1998, just as that national government, the Bolger and then Shipley national government, was kind of at the tail end of its 9-year tenure. And so I worked there for about a year, and then Helen Clark became Prime Minister in 1999. And I was fortunate enough to then go across into Parliament House, the old Parliament House, after the 1999 election, and be part of the leader's office, the opposition leader's office. As a junior press secretary. We had 3 press secretaries, senior, middle and junior. And so then I worked in Jenny Shipley's office for a couple of years until she stepped down. And then my wife and I, at the time, we decided that perhaps it was going to be a good move to get to Auckland. She'd got a transfer. And so we arrived up here in 2001, and I got a job with a public relations firm at that stage.
Oh, awesome. All this experience, right? All this experience that you've gone through, how did it really shape your leadership skills?
I'm someone who knows my strengths, but probably more so knows my weaknesses. And so I surround myself with people that can help. And while I can get out there and do the retail politics and enjoy the speaking and enjoy the public kind of interactions, there is a machinery that's well supported by parliamentary services to make sure that all my emails get answered, that all my paperwork, administrative work when it comes to expenses and everything else gets it accounted for and attributed to, and that everyone in the electorate kind of has access to me and can get sense out of me in a timely and seemly way. So my leadership is very much just being one of a team and enabling others to kind of enjoy some of the moments that I get to enjoy and enjoy themselves too in politics, because one thing about politics is you're just passing through, and there's nothing more dead than a ex-politician. They disappear off the public radar very quickly.
Okay.
Even the good ones, even the high-profile ones. And so people come and go, and so I think with some age you get perspective, and particularly I've been involved in central and local politics, that you only get a certain time, and you've got to make it as productive as you can. You've got to see what difference you can make, but you've also got to keep it in perspective that after the job finishes up, you're back to your regular life. And so that's why we are coached heavily within the party and by Parliament too, to keep, to look after those that are around you. Yeah, it's a case of just trying to keep that balance.
All right.
It's a busy life, but also keeping your family and friends in check, because when it all collapses and you retire or get kicked out, that's what you've got to go back to. The political machinery will move on.
What was the biggest challenge that you faced in the politics, and how did you approach it?
Challenging moment in my political career is possibly when I've had some negative press, might have been mistakes I'd made, even since when I was an Auckland councillor for 6 years. If you're making enough noise, then invariably you're going to be a bit of a target for your opponents if you're exposing them, particularly when I was in local government, for them to come after you to try and discredit you and I was quite an effective for back in the day, opposition councillor to the Len Brown administration. And they made a claim against me. It's probably not worth going into now because in the end it was disproven and I was exonerated. But nonetheless, when you're walking into a council meeting and a journalist it was a thing about a holiday that I suppose that a media outlet had paid for and I hadn't declared. I had declared it, and it was actually predated my time at council. But nonetheless, we were giving Mr. Brown, the Mayor of the day, Len Brown, heaps about his lack of declaration with hotel nights and everything else. And so his office kind of threw out this and the media lapped it up. And so you put on the moment, and I remember I had a friend that was visiting me that day, and we went outside, and I just thought, geez, what's just happened? They've thrown this at me. Didn't I declare that? I'm sure I did. But they obviously know. Anyway, I knew it was going to be cartoons and big news, and my whole angle for Mr. Brown would be completely discredited because I'd be labelled a hypocrite. But in the end, as I said, it was I came out of it clean, but not quick enough. And so, I was under a lot of pressure there for a week or two. I think the lesson there is in politics is just to always keep moving forward. Never let it because, geez, it could give you cancer. It could break up your family. It could drive you to addiction. It could drive you to depression. If it could drive you to burnout if you didn't let some things just pass over.
Okay.
And so the lesson that I've kind of taken into Parliament is just let things pass over. I think it was my old boss, John Banks, when he was Mayor of Auckland, he said that one thing about politics is that you got to remember everything passes.
I know you run around a lot of projects that you're having. You have a lot of initiatives that you're in, like Justice Committee that you are in. How are you handling this stress? What are the secret behind it?
Well, look, I'm probably, any of my colleagues were watching this, they'd be thinking, geez, Brewer's probably under the least stress of anyone in the National Party caucus. I'm fortunate because my team, my electorate committee, I put it all on them because they work like dogs. Handling the stress, I'm pretty well supported here by the community at this point, by my committee who do a fabulous job fundraising and putting on events and running the machinery that is the local party organisation. I'm wonderfully supported here by parliamentary services staff that are apolitical, that work for Parliament. They don't work for the National Party or the National MP. They work for Parliament to support the parliamentarian and electorate MP. So my managing stress is, I make sure I get enough sleep, and I make sure I get enough downtime too. It might not look like that if you're following me on Facebook, but yes, this is a 7-day-a-week job. But sometimes you just get your breaks where you can, and they might be unusual times where it might be in the middle of the afternoon in recess or something that you're able to have a little bit of time out, and because you've got an event that night and then a breakfast and everything else. So look, the cabinet ministers are the ones and the prime minister are the ones that are under stress. Us backbenchers are busy, but we're busy doing things we're enjoying, which is serving the community, and giving it a good crack in Parliament.
Awesome. So you have mentioned in some digital platforms that cost of living is going over the roof. As a parent, as a father, how did it really influence to shape the economic policies?
So cost of living has been a big motivator for all of us in the National Party. In fact, across the government, the tripartite coalition that we've got there with ACT and New Zealand First. But for National, it was big. And we knew when inflation, 3 years ago, whenever it was kicking in at over 7%, that the country was in real trouble, because all that does is just a robber in your pocket. I think might have been Nicola Willis's language. and it just erodes your, your spending power. Getting down inflation as best we can to lower those interest rates, lower the official cash rate, and lower interest rates for people is we think is one of the most important things we can do as a government. But as well as that, to improve and to reduce that cost of living crisis that we've been through, and to improve it, is getting on top of law and order, fixing our healthcare system, and lifting educational standards and achievement.
For being a leader, it's important to have that continuous learning. How are you finding this learning time for do all this learning stuff? Because all these things are new to you, or you are already experienced to it, or you're putting hands on something new, right? So how are you learning and exploring the possibilities and building a better future?
The reality is we're all retail politicians. And so we're busy out there promoting under MMP. We're forever promoting the brand of National and pushing that. And also we've got to get out there and meet the people and keep connected with them and do our best to serve and represent them. And so thinking time and policy development and that and ongoing professional development and ongoing learning is often on the job.
Okay.
And not an allocated set amount of time. It's amazing how much you can learn and read and do on an aeroplane, and because we spend a bit of time on aeroplanes, and that's one time where you can't be ringing people on the phone. Normally people aren't harassing you, and so you get in, unless they plonk you next to an MP or a member of the public that knows who you are. And so you do get an hour or so often just to go through your papers, read things, write columns and the likes of that. So upskilling, learning, policy development and that, it is often something that you're kind of doing on the go. And so, we don't get the opportunity to sit around with a blue skies kind of blackboard and think, what are we going to do tomorrow?
All right.
It's often things are in tray, and as a new MP, it's like learning a language. The best way to do it is total immersion.
All right.
Fall into that country and be the only person in the room that can't speak that language, and you'll probably pick it up quicker than you would sitting in the library trying to read it, learn it. And so that's a bit like politics too. We have had a steep learning curve. You pretty much get speeches kind of put in front of you and say, you're going to be talking about this bill in the House for 10 minutes. In 10 minutes' time.
So you're discovering anything.
So you have to learn to, and often you'll see me going through my notes like this as we're trying to think fast in the house on our feet.
Do you have any habits or routines that you practice to have this substantial growth and make sure that you're continuously learning or you are handling stress very well, all these capabilities to achieve this? Do you have any kind of practice or habits that you follow?
One thing that I need to be doing more of, and I was quite a avid exerciser back in my 30s and 40s, is to exercise more and try and get a bit more life balance. That doesn't necessarily mean for everyone going down to the gym and pumping iron and getting this amazing physique, because I think I'm probably past that. But just whatever that exercise means, if it's taking a dog for a walk, if it's going for a walk around the block, if it's going for a swim, if it's going for a light jog, if it's whatever it can take, a formal context of playing in a team or playing golf or something, or it can take an informal context of just walking around a reserve or being active instead of driving your car everywhere. You kind of think, no, we'll walk down the road to see our friends. And so that is something that that has helped me in life achieve a bit of balance, and I probably need to get back to.
All right, that's interesting. So you've been advocate for the businesses in Auckland, all around New Zealand for quite a long time. What advice you'll be able to give for an aspiring entrepreneur?
My advice would be, do something entrepreneurial. It doesn't have to make you a lot of money. Do something that shows, that sets you apart, that shows that you're a self-starter, that you've got some ingenuity, that you've got some creative imagination, and that you've got some stickability and discipline to keep turning it over every month. In my case, every month you have to wake up and do it. You deliver the last one, you have to wake up and start on the next one. So that kind of sets you apart if you can do that, especially in the world that we live in, where government is so big. We're trying to make it smaller, and there's so many corporates, and people can just come through and just be part of the system and just come through and kind of make their way like that. That is an achievement in its own. Don't let me dismiss that. But if you really want to set yourself apart for the likes of politics, if you can do something, and again, when I say entrepreneurial, it doesn't have to be making a business really, really succeed, or making a lot of money, or creating something that was never done before. It's basically, I see entrepreneurship as showing what you can do on your own.
Okay.
And yes, you're going to be supported by different people in there, but for someone to think that person did that on their own, off their own steam, and if it wasn't for them, that product wouldn't be here, or that organization could just be setting up an organization. It could be helping a particular group in society. It's all entrepreneurial. And so some people think entrepreneurial is all about, inventing something or making a lot of money. I would say if to show yourself as an entrepreneur is to show yourself as achieving something that wouldn't have been achieved if you weren't on this planet.
Okay.
And so that is the greatest thing. There's a lot of things we can do in society where you can, work through corporate organizations and big organizations and just be a peg and to a certain extent, a very successful job, career path you may have. But if you want to be set apart and have something on your CV that sets you apart as far as the public and politics goes, do something that no one else has.
Okay. How is your typical MP day look like?
We have 30 weeks a year when Parliament is operating, but it operates for 3 days a week, basically. We sometimes go into urgency around budget time and that, Christmas time and the likes, new government time. But so it's about 90 days loosely in Wellington, and then you've got 270 days here in Auckland. So most of it's in Auckland, but the days in Wellington, we're just bracing ourselves now because we've got a 3-week block after next week onwards.
Okay.
The days in Wellington are long and intense, and often you don't leave the Parliament precinct mostly because you can't. Unless you get leave, you can't actually leave the Parliament precinct outside of your lunch and dinner break.
Okay.
And so if the whips are voting on your behalf, you need to be in, there needs to be a certain percentage of MPs actually in the precinct. And so you do get locked in there, and you're locked in there often 12, 15, 16 hours. Some of the ministers are there. The Prime Minister is a very early starter. He probably clocks in 18, 20 hours a day in Parliament when he's there. And so they're long days, but fortunately I can scurry away to my office in the Parliamentary Library, which I share with about 9 other MPs, an open plan office, because we're short of quarters at the moment as we're going through a redevelopment of Parliament. And fortunately, as a backbencher, my responsibilities are relatively light compared to what my senior colleagues as cabinet ministers have to put up with.
That's awesome. Can I ask you something? Is there any bill, so the police departments, currently they don't have any weapons with them, right? I don't think they, on general prospect, they don't carry any weapons, I believe.
Yeah.
They don't carry it, right? So is there any bills that going to issue them for carrying on any kind of weapons that they can support their...
Generally, there's been a push traditionally for New Zealand police officers not to bear arms, and I think the public quite like that, and awesome. I think at this stage we will continue that.
Oh, that's good.
So we don't want to get too heavy-handed. That's why we're trying to make these legislative changes.
That will be a great thing, and still it's a good way of police not having such weapons, because it is more approachable to them. Let me ask you a story about your policies or an initiative that you've been in and that made a real impact in the life of common man.
When I was running the Newmarket Business Association, we had one street cleaner that would clean on behalf of Auckland City Council, the previous Auckland City Council, the whole of Broadway, the whole of all those side streets. And she was a beautiful Samoan lady, middle-aged, probably in her late 50s back then in the 2000s. Her name is Rachel Sefa, and a woman of very strong Christian faith, came over to New Zealand and had been working for one of the council's cleaning contractors for a number of years and had been assigned Newmarket, which was a big town centre. And she would literally go around with her sweeper and her brush, going along the gutter, sweeping things up. There's no mechanical things that go over. It was her. We're talking nearly 20 years ago.
Yep.
I formed a bit of a relationship with Rachel, and we found out when her birthday was, and we'd make a bit of a fuss and get her up to the office and celebrate her birthday, and we'd get her in the newspaper. She said to me one time that she had a son in Samoa that she hadn't seen for years, since he was little, and I think he was being brought up by family, maybe her parents or sister or brother or something, and she couldn't afford to go back to Samoa, and he wasn't able to come out to New Zealand. And so I went to a travel agent and I said to them, why don't you sponsor a trip, return fare to Apia for Rachel to go back and see her son, for a couple of weeks. I'll talk to council, make sure she's got the leave and everything else. And so they did. And the greatest joy I had in Newmarket, if there was ever to be a moment, was not cutting ribbons on Lumsden Green upgrades or Broadway streetscapes or the new viaduct motorway above our heads or anything like that. It was actually presenting Rachel with a ticket, a return ticket to Samoa to see her son. And we said, don't worry about the streets. We'll keep them clean. You go and, see your family.
That's wonderful.
And so that was, if you put it down to, one human thing that I'm most proud of is probably what we did for Rachel. And again, I organised it. I didn't pay for it, but I was able to use a bit of my brokering as the chief executive of the Newmarket Business Association. We subsequently gave the travel agency plenty of publicity, and they didn't need or want it, but we gave it to them. And they wanted to do the right thing too. And she had a wonderful time, caught up with her boy, and I still keep in touch with her.
That's really wonderful and heart-touching as well. That's amazing. Okay, that made me ask you a next question. How do you measure success, and what metrics you use to measure success?
Yeah. Look, I think it's a bit the ability to be able to live a balanced life. As we progress through life, we realise that you can't take it with you. You can't take your money with you. I think success is all about being able to make a bit of a difference, create something that wasn't there, trying to be a good parent, trying to be a good friend, trying to be a good partner, trying to be a good colleague. And I think also, and I've always thought this, is as I get older, and I'd like to think I'm going to be able to make a contribution for at least another 20 years. It might not all be in Parliament. You try and mentor, even if it's not in a formal sense, or even if they don't even know you're doing it. But try and pass something down, and try not to be, as the old adage goes, don't let the old man in, age before your time. Don't kind of shrink in your worldview and just become, because that is, some people think that, politicians are self-absorbed and self-serving and everything else. But I think the most self-absorbed, self-serving person is that person who shuts down, and it might be through no fault of their own, but shuts down, shuts away, and is only interested in themselves. That is a person that is self-absorbed. Again, it might be through no fault of their own, but I think as you get through life, you want to just keep the door open. You want to keep being a contributor. You want to keep leaving a few life lessons, even indirectly, without lecturing people, to your children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, young colleagues. So I think just the lesson, the legacy in life, I think, is not so much what you can materially leave, but helping people get the life skills of how to operate, how to manage life and how to work life is people seeing how their predecessors have done it.
What advice you have for the younger generations? Oh, the younger people, I would say.
Yeah, the advice I have for the younger generation, if I can be so bold to give any, is actually give things a go when you're young. And when I'm saying young, I'm talking 20s and 30s, Give things a go. And when you're in your early 50s, if you had this thought, you'd probably come up with 100 reasons not to do it. You'd be like, oh no, I've got this and I've got that, and now I've got teenage kids, and I can't, how am I going to do soccer, and I've got to focus on my business or my job, and do it, take the chance, a bit like with my newspaper. I'd never have done that now, and set up an office off the smell and oil rag, and you can do things. You've got a lot more almost confidence and courage when you're younger.
I agree.
And you've got less excuses. And so don't put off things because many of us will never get to retire. And so don't think, oh, I'll do that when I retire. I'll travel Italy when I retire, or I'll write my book when I retire. Many of us will never get there, sadly. So do things when you're young, because as you get older, you think when you're young that life's going to get easier. Like my kids say, I want to be an adult because it's so much more fun than being a kid, Dad, because you can do whatever you want. As it works, kids feel like they're under duress. Well, mine we do. And my only advice, and I'm not in a position to give any, but my only advice would be, if you want to do something, do it while you're young, because the roadblocks and the consternation and everything else just kicks in the older and older you get. And so do it while you're young, because that's when you're free. Okay.
Going forward, what changes for New Zealand, or what kind of innovation New Zealand require to be competitive with the world?
It's about opening new markets. It's about opening ourselves out to the world, being less insular. We're not going to make a living off ourselves unless we want to be villagers or peasants, and that's fine. Many are, and that's fine. But if you want to be able to grow and live a standard of living that everyone deserves in this country, then we have to keep trading and we have to keep growing. And so we've been coming off a very low growth oasis, exports, and the likes. We need to get a lot more energy too. We need to get our commodities out there. We need to look at how, where we can excel in higher tech and innovation and science, agri-research. We've got a lot of abilities and a lot of brain power in this country, and we've got to harness it now, because if we don't, we'll just become another Pacific island nation, and that's fine, but we'll be the coldest ones at it. And Australia just keeps charging with its infrastructure. If you go to Sydney now and all that, ongoing infrastructure development, ongoing trading opportunities, ongoing work with Americans and the UK and everything else. And so we need to be back as having some global presence and being a willing and able trading partner, and being an attractive place for investors to come and move their foreign capital into New Zealand so we can use it and benefit by it. And as a government, our main driver is to lift the economic growth, and we're only lifting it. Our opponents will say to feather our own nest. Rubbish. We're lifting it because when we get richer, when you lift, everyone benefits from it. There's, the environment. The best environments in this world are those of the richest nations. Yeah. So if the environmentalists say, oh, we're all just a bunch of capitalists. No, if you want to go and see the worst environments, then go to some of the poorest countries and look in their lakes and rivers and rubbish dumps and villages and everything else. And if you want to go to some of the wealthiest countries, do the same. And you tell me if that's a benefit of capitalism or not.
All right, we'll jump into our last session.
Yeah.
It's a rapid round session.
Very rapid.
Yeah. You can give one word or one sentence, and we'll write it up. Okay, cool. Who's your biggest influence and or a mentor?
Probably if I had to think of someone, it'd probably be John Banks, who was a former mayor of Auckland, former long-time National Party MP. He was someone that kind of took me under his wing.
Awesome.
He was someone that I worked for as his press officer in the town hall, someone I knew in the late 90s when he was a backbench MP, someone who's had a lot of success and done it all on his own, and someone who's always been really kind and good to me and has created a few opportunities that I wouldn't have had without him.
What is your favorite book?
Well, I'm actually reading Barack Obama's biography at the moment, The Promised Land. It's about this thick. I got it for Father's Day. I think I'm on about page 5. Father's Day being 3 days ago. In case this is being watched in 2 years' time. And that I do read and enjoy the political biographies and the likes of that. Stephen Joyce, actually, On the Record by Stephen Joyce, and he wrote an account of him as a senior operative in the John Key government from 2008 to 16, basically. He was also an entrepreneur with creating a mega radio platform, merging a lot of businesses into one mega entity and doing very well off it. And then coming into politics, firstly as a kind of behind-the-scenes operative for the National Party, winning or getting us close to winning elections, re-energising us after a very poor result in 2002, to getting us into nearly winning in 2005, and then winning with John Key in 2008. And Stephen was someone they put straight into cabinet. And anyway, so his book, Stephen Joyce, On the Record, is also a good read.
All right. Finally, the last question. What qualities a leader should have?
Empathy. I think in these days with even in corporate life, commercial life, community life, political life, empathy. You've got to be, I think the term is authentic, and part of authentic is just being yourself and showing empathy. I'm old enough to remember kind of the 90s where it was all power suits and the last thing you wanted to show was any empathy. The leaders, it was all about being tough and being removed and being decisive, and that would make you powerful. But I think the most powerful people now are those that are actually able to show their raw side, show their, naked emotions, show their empathy, show their softer side, and show their connections with kind of everyday life. And so, I think empathy is one of the big credentials.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. That's it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks for coming.
It was amazing podcast. Thank you very much. Good to see you. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of nlsa Podcast with Cameron Brewer. Remember, leadership is all about growth, resilience, and continuous learning. Now, it's your turn to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring conversations with leaders that shaping the future. Click that bell icon to stay notified. Until next time, keep striving for excellence. Signing off, this is your host, Anuvindh.